What is going on, everybody? How you all doing out there? I hope this video is finding you well. Welcome or welcome back to Get Right On In. My name is Andrew, for those of you who do not know, and today we are just going to be talking about authorial voice, both in understanding other authors as well as developing your own. So with all that out of the way, without further ado, let's get right on in. So as both reader and writer, you have probably heard the term authorial voice. If you are a reader, you already know how you attach to different authors for different reasons. You know what kind of tropes you like. You know if you prefer plot-driven or character-driven works. You know what you would like to see more and less of. As a writer, you're also familiar with all of these things. However, when you go to read works by other writers, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to them. They are the published professionals after all, aren't they? But what makes authorial voice vary from writer to writer? How does understanding authorial voice help you find your own? So first, let's start with 5 different examples from 5 different books. These books vary in genre and author. Some are more popular, some are more indie. And while we will talk about what books belong to who at the end, first, let's just see if you can notice any immediate differences in these opening lines. Book 1. Logan plunged through the trees, bare feet slipping and sliding on the wet earth, the slush, the wet pine needles, breath rasping in his chest, blood thumping in his head. He stumbled and sprawled onto his side, nearly cut his chest open with his own axe, lay there panting, peering through the shadowy forest. Book 2. Sophia had aced most tests she'd taken in her life. But once, just this once, she hoped for a negative result. She drew a long breath, and her russet brown hands shook as she picked up the pregnancy test from the marble vanity. Like a fortune teller looking into a crystal ball, she peered through the plastic cover. Book 3. Adelaide Bonham was convinced that her house hated her. She clutched her heavy comforter tighter around her bony shoulders, but it didn't help. Mainly because it hadn't been the sudden wave of cold rolling through her bedroom that caused the shaking in her wrinkled hands. Not entirely, anyway. Book 4. The sun was low in the sky on another perfect New Hampshire day. Henry Smith had just washed and brushed his favorite horse, Fiona, just inside the old red barn. He led her back to her stall and made sure there was plenty of hay to munch on, and then tossed the bucket of soapy water outside into a patch of lawn. The workday was over. And finally, Book 5. I was 9 years old and walking myself to school one morning when I heard the unfamiliar sound of a prepubescent boy calling my name. I had heard my name spoken out loud by males before, but it was most often by one of my brothers, my father, or a teacher, and it was usually followed up with a shot to the side of the head. So, what are some things you might notice immediately? Perhaps it was how the first entry seemed the most urgent of them all. Or that the second and third entries painted a picture of the character immediately. Maybe it was that the fourth entry was the only one that defined the setting off the bat. Or how the last one being written in the first person added authenticity and humor. Each of these openings showcases a difference in how the author approaches telling their story. Even if you recognize these books based on their first few sentences, you can still tell that each one of these entries was written by an author that was completely separate from the other. That being said, each of these stories also lures the reader in with their own unique way. So for finding your own authorial voice, I have said it before and I will say it again. A really good exercise for all writers of all skill levels is to simply write out a passage in a book that's already been published. Even something like what I just did for this video, taking a few books and writing out their first few sentences, allows you to understand the flow and style of different authors. From there, you can start to develop your own understanding of how these authors utilize their voice. By choosing and understanding what you like and don't like about that author's voice, you're further able to hone in on your own skills to decide what you like and don't like for yourself. Obviously, I'm not trying to recommend that you you type out an entire novel that was already written by somebody else, but analyzing how an author utilizes their own voice is key to helping you understanding your own. So now that we've talked about this a little bit, we will go over what books we just went through. First up was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Second is Blaming the Wind by Alessandra Harris. Third was Stone in a Hard Place by R.L. King. Fourth was The Patience of a Dead Man by Michael Clark. And finally, the fifth one was Are You There, Vodka? It's Me, Chelsea by Chelsea Handler. So now that you know who these authors are and the books that they represent, go back and read those opening sentences again. How does each author set the tone immediately? Is the genre already noticeable? Which, personally, for Patience of the Dead Man, my personal opinion is that that is the only book out of all of these that did not actually define the genre off the bat. And would any of these openings entice you to read further? Why or why not? If it is a book that you have already read, what about it intrigued you to read more in the first place? So understanding the use of authorial voice in other authors is one of the many ways that newer authors and seasoned authors can further develop their own voice. However, nothing can top the simple act of practicing over time. Whether the books you write are good or bad, the act of simply writing out a manuscript from start to finish will help you develop your own voice one way or the other. So keep notes along the way of things you like and don't like, of different publishing trends, stories, ideas that come into your head, and utilize your own experience to do your best to produce the best story possible. So what are some of the ways that you develop your own authorial voice? Have you ever tried writing out passages from other authors? How clear do you think your own voice is? Let me know down in those comments. And while you're there, if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would consider giving it a little thumbs up, as well as potentially consider pressing on that little subscribe button to join me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and sometimes on Sundays, for bookish and writerly and entertainment-y-esque content just like this. While you're in that description box, feel free to click on the link for the write-up for this post over on the Get Right On In website so that you can reread these opening paragraphs as many times as you would like. In the meantime, I hope you all have a day just as beautiful as you, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!